Got it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ian Scarfe. I'm the director of the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival. And today we're doing another one of our great Zoom concerts. These began in April of 2020, while we were all still reeling from the first lockdowns of the pandemic. And, there was a lot to be learned from doing music via the computer. Most of us who are classically trained musicians are used to not having to touch any of the electronic equipment that goes into recording, producing, and broadcasting. As a classical musician, most of us live our lives entirely acoustically. But the pandemic forced us into this, what was once an uncomfortable space, and is now kind of a wonderful way to bring music and communities and people together. So I'm glad to be doing this again, even though who would have thought that we'd be here almost 2 years later, still having to go through various lockdowns and still having to sort of take in our culture and our community via a computer instead of live and in person. However, like I said, we're all grateful to be here and we're very happy that you all are here. I'm going to be playing later on this program with my colleague Ellen McGehee. Ellen is the co-founder of the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival, and she spends most of her life in Trinity County in the wilderness of Northern California, where she hosts the main retreats and residencies that this festival enjoys and has enjoyed for the last 11 or 12 years. But first, we have two special guests joining us from other parts of the country, and I'm about to introduce them to you now. Wait. I'm going to do one more thing first. There we go. I'm about to introduce, first I will introduce you to my colleague, Joseph Howe. Joey is a cellist. He lives in Boulder, Colorado, and he is joining us remotely, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you. Joey, hello.
Hello.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited for this.
Well, by way of an introduction, I wanted to tell our guests that, Joey and I had a plan to do a little project at the beginning of January. We were going to get together and learn some trio repertoire with our friend Ellen. We were going to do a little retreat in the Trinity Alps. We were going to do a little tour that took us through all kinds of Northern California towns. But that was one of the first things that was canceled with this latest surge of the virus. And so today is a way for us to sort of still feature Joey and still get him a chance to perform and still get him this important creative outlet. So Joey, do you mind giving us your 3-sentence introduction about yourself, your musical biography, or things you think we should know, and then maybe tell us a little bit about what you're going to play today?
Sure. My name is Joey, as Ian said. I grew up in Salem, Oregon. I went to University of Oregon in Eugene, so that's where I'm from. I moved here to Boulder, Colorado for graduate school, and I have been here ever since. I live in Colorado. I play all kinds of different sort of. I teach cello here. I play in orchestras. I play chamber music. I do all kinds of stuff just around the Denver area, basically. As far south as Colorado Springs, as far north as Cheyenne, and then west into the mountains a lot of times for yeah. That's the short version.
Right. And
um,
sometimes on the computer.
Sometimes on the computer, yes. So today I'm going to be playing the first Bach cello suite, and
Bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Yay.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Bravo, bravo.
Yeah.
Joey, that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
job,
you,
Joey.
everyone.
We have the whole music festival crew here.
Oh, 3 of us.
Joey, thank you so much. That was Johann Sebastian Bach's Cello Suite Number 1, played on Joey's Baroque cello, an instrument that he got specifically for playing this kind of music. Joey, I hope you'll stick around. Usually at the end of our programs, we do a little live Q&A, so you'll be around later, right?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Joey. To remind you all, after a performance like that, you are welcome to unmute yourself and clap away. You know, applause is kind of the spiritual nourishment that we musicians thrive upon. Next on our program, I'm going to introduce you to another one of our colleagues who is also tuning in remotely. This next part of the program is also going to be some music composed and performed by my colleague Roseminna Watson. Now, Rosie, I am going to find you and put a spotlight on you as well. Rosie is joining us from her home in New England. Rosie, welcome.
Hi, thanks. So happy to be here.
I suppose I should have asked before we were live, but I know you as Rosie because we were in school for so long. Would you like us to refer to you by your full name, Roseminna?
I mean, either one or any part thereof.
Okay, well, it's a beautiful name, so I'll do my best. Welcome to the program. I'm going to ask you the same thing that I asked Joey. Would you mind giving the audience a sort of a 3-sentence introduction of yourself? And maybe a little bit about how we know each other, and maybe where you are tuning in from.
Sure, yeah. Well, right now I am here in Providence, Rhode Island, and it is absolutely freezing out. So all the heat has been going out of my house all day because it's super windy and it's like 0 degrees outside. So that's where I am right now, and I have had kind of an eclectic journey to get here. I studied classical violin since the time I was about 3 or 4. I started learning with my mom until I was 11, and that was a really free and creative way for me to start my instrument. And I credit my mom for kind of the progression of my journey ever since I was very, very tiny. So my whole family is actually artists of one type or another. So that has also informed what I've done with my life a lot and my relationship to my instrument. I studied visual art in college. I got my degree in visual art first, and then I went on to get a master's in violin performance at Stony Brook, and then after that is when I met Ian out in San Francisco I was in a chamber music program out there. From there, I met some of the people who later formed a string quartet that I moved around the country a little bit with. We ended up in Austin in a residency, and from there, after we disbanded, that was about, that was like 8 years ago now, I think, maybe more, 9. Time is flying, especially in the pandemic. And since then, I've started composing music of my own and kind of combining various aspects of my journey thus far into sort of a more cohesive and integrative expression. So it's always evolving, and but it's been a really interesting path.
Right. Well, welcome. Now, as Rosie mentioned, most of our time spent together here in California was playing classical chamber music. But since then, Rosie has become more into composing her own music, and that is actually what's going to be featured next on the program. So would you mind telling us a little bit about this next piece which you wrote and sort of what we can expect the journey to be like, and anything special you'd like us to note before we listen?
Yeah, So the piece I'm going to play is called Lullabies for Icarus. I wrote it in December of 2019 is when I finished it, so just before this whole mess started. And ever since the pandemic started, I kind of thought of this piece, which I had only gotten to perform once. At that point, I kind of thought of this piece as a sort of foreshadowing for mankind, because it's based on the myth of Icarus, which many of you probably are familiar with, but I'll just give a short summary in case. So Icarus was imprisoned in a tower in Crete with his father Daedalus, who was an inventor. And they were going crazy in the tower, just wanting freedom and wanting, to get out of their confinement. And so Daedalus, the father, sat there watching birds fly around the tower all day, and he thought, oh, okay, well, I know what to do. I'll make us some wings out of bird feathers and wax, and we'll fly to liberation. So that's what he did, and he fashioned these giant wings for both him and Icarus out of bird feathers and wax. And before they set off on their flight across the sea, he said to Icarus, be careful not to fly too close to the sun, or your wings will melt and fall apart. The wax will unbind and you'll plummet to your death. And also be careful not to fly too close to the sea, or your feathers will be saturated with moisture and you'll be too heavy and you'll fall. So of course Icarus sets off, and his father is a little bit below him on an even course of equilibrium. But Icarus gets overtaken and just so absorbed in the sensation of flight and feels like a divine being. He forgets his mortality. He forgets the laws of the universe and the warnings of his father, and he flies right up toward the fireball of sun. And of course, his wings melt and he goes tumbling down to his death. And so I think that this myth is just interesting in light of what's going on in the world. Just the necessity to find balance between ambition and acceptance of who we are, where we are, what we could become, and what is simply something we have to accept about our place in the universe and the laws that govern it. So this piece is in 7 miniature movements, and you will be able to kind of track the stages of the myth, I think, as it goes on. It's about 8 to 10 minutes long. I think it's about 8 minutes long, with these 7 little miniature movements. So, yeah.
Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you. So, all right.
If you need to, don't forget to change a microphone setting.
Okay, I think we should be good, but just let me know if... Is it all good?
I think so, yes.
Okay, and I apologize in advance if my cats come and start attacking me in the middle of this. It could happen, or doing something else, but we'll just roll with it.
Wow. Wow.
Beautiful.
Wow, that was extraordinary. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Brava.
Rosie, we seem to have lost your audio for the moment. I'm going to
I can put it on. I didn't put it on.
yeah, I think it's all good. So that was just such a wonderful performance. Thank you for that, Rosie.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you. And thank you so much everyone for like Ian mentioned, being here still online. So, yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, we're going to take time after the program for comments, for questions. So if any of you have something for Rosie, are you going to be able to stick around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know it's getting late out in Providence, but thank you. I appreciate that. I wanted to also announce that Rosie played on a couple of our programs last year, and one of our dear friends and patrons of the music festival, Michael Kogan, was so struck with her music that he asked about funding another commission for the music festival, that we would commission Rosie to write some new music, some new chamber music. And so that is in place, even though tragically, Michael passed away last fall. Now we have the Michael Kogan Memorial Fund, which is going to sort of for the future of this festival, help us work with composers like Rosie, creating new music for the future. So we have that to look forward to, a new piece that we're going to premiere later this year. Thank you again, Rosie. We'll see you in just a little bit.
Yep, looking forward to the rest. Thank you.
The rest of the program is going to feature... I just muted myself, excuse me. The rest of the program is going to feature about 15 or 20 minutes more of music. Before we get there, I want to remind everyone that today's program, like virtually all of our concerts since this festival was founded in 2011, this program is open to the public on a pay what you want basis. Now, I don't think most arts organizations could say that for 11 years they are completely operating on a pay what you want basis. But I think it's one of the unique and really wonderful things about this festival is that we really believe our mission is to make classical music and classical chamber music something that is accessible to all people anywhere. And that's why one of our missions is to make our programs open like this. And it's why we spend a lot of time visiting rural communities that don't necessarily have as much access to sort of traveling groups or sort of cultural institutions that we're used to in a big city. So I just want to ask you all if you would take a moment to just consider what this program, what the festival, and what all of these musicians and our mission of bringing this music to life, what it's worth to you. And if you would make a contribution to support this, a contribution of any amount is going to help us keep doing this in the future. Everything from doing Zoom concerts like this to visiting all of the wonderful rural communities around the Western United States to commissioning new music like we just discussed with Rosie. The easiest way to do that is to go to the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival website, which you should be able to find easily by using your trusty Google. But I'm also going to put it in the chat here, trinityalpscmf.org. We have a little donation box. Okay, great. As the director, it's my job to say that at least once every program. And so thank you for sitting through that. Now, the last part of the program is going to feature me taking a different seat. Instead of in front of the computer, I'll be in front of the piano. And I will introduce you to my colleague, Ellen McGehee, and we are going to play a couple of last pieces to close out the program. So let me take one moment and switch a few things over. Let's switch the microphone first. And then the first one? Got it. All right. Now I am speaking to you on a different microphone. I hope it sounds okay. You can give us a thumbs up or put it in the chat if it sounds all right. Like I said, my colleague Ellen McGehee is the co-founder of this wonderful festival. She lives in Hyam in Trinity County, where she is the main host for our residencies and retreats for musicians to go out into the wilds of Northern California and do music and live on a working farm and sort of participate in the incredible land that they have created and participate in growing the food and engaging in the natural world that surrounds it. It's really the heart of this music festival. And so I'm delighted that she is joining me here today. We are in my house in San Francisco, and we're going to play pieces by two different composers for you. Both of these pieces are music that is inspired by folk music. Folk music and popular music has always been around. It's not just nowadays that there is this divide between classical concert music and like popular style music that's been going on for quite a while. And both of these composers sort of sought to bridge the gap between the two. The first pair of little songs we're going to do are by the Spanish composer Manuel de Falla. These are from a suite of Spanish folk songs that he arranged. These are originally a suite for a singer to do with a piano, but they work in a really wonderful way for violin and piano. The first of these is a little folk song called Nana. Nana, as you might imagine, means grandmother. And De Falla describes this as a berceuse, which is translated would be a lullaby. So you can think of this as a grandmother's lullaby. The violin sings out the tune. The piano creates this very atmospheric accompaniment. After that, the second of these that we'll do is a song called El Paño Moruno, the Moorish cloth. In it, you hear some more wild sort of Spanish folk idioms, like the strumming on the violin, which imitates the sort of flamenco-style guitar, and other things like that. We hope you enjoy this little pair of songs by Manuel de Falla. Hey, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. Should we do it? I love the third one so much. We're gonna do a third of these just because there's a whole set, and the third one, like I mentioned, is one of my favorites. This next one that we'll do is called Asturiana. It's another one where you'll notice Ellen is putting a mute on the bridge of her violin there. The mute creates a kind of a covered and muted sound, and it changes the whole color and the whole atmosphere of this piece. This one it's like another lullaby, but it's a little more atmospheric, or it reminds me a little bit of those early 20th century French composers, that kind of impressionist kind of atmosphere. So we hope you enjoy. We hope you enjoy one more work by Manuel de Falla. This is Asturiana.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. So those were three works by Manuel de Falla from his suite of Spanish folk songs. Like I said, originally those are for a singer, so they work really well when you take the melody and add it to the violin. But as you heard, there were other special effects that are not part of the singer. All that strumming and the harmonics, those were violin effects added in the arrangement. Next on the program, we're going to end our concert tonight with some music by Edvard Grieg. Now, like I mentioned earlier, these last couple pieces are music that's really, classical concert music that's inspired by popular music. And Grieg, in his day, he lived in the late years of the 1800s, the height of what we call the Romantic era. And Grieg loved the native folk music, the songs and dances of his homeland of Norway. And so Norwegian folk songs and dances make their way into so much of Grieg's, otherwise very classical concert music. We're going to play the second movement of Grieg's Violin Sonata number 3. This one begins with a beautiful sort of floating song that just sort of rings out over the chords of the piano, and then you hear the violin take it up. Like most sonatas, this one is very conversational between the instruments. But in the middle of this beautiful movement, things change, and we hear one of those lively Norwegian folk dances with all the rhythm that you might expect behind it. At the end, the whole last couple pages of this piece are wonderful because the melody, this folk song type melody, comes back at the end. But it's meant to be played in what we call in music, we call it tempo rubato, which is an interesting term. The best way to describe it is by describing what it is not. You probably all maybe remember from your piano lessons or violin lessons when you were young how your teacher would put a metronome on the piano, and the metronome would go tick tock, and you had to go hands together and you had to play in time. Well, tempo rubato is when a composer wants something to be very fluid in the rhythm. It wants it to move forward and pull back, and basically very different from that tick-tocking of the metronome. So the whole, like I said, the last 2 pages of this are done in this very flexible kind of time, and you'll hear how the two of us have really had to rehearse to get together our idea of how this music sort of waxes and wanes, how the little roller coaster of this melody goes. Are you ready? You want to say anything?
And it's different every time.
Yes, that's right. You will never hear this again, except that we're recording it. So this is the second movement of Grieg's Violin Sonata number 3. We hope you enjoy. Thank you very much. That was the middle movement, the Andante Tranquillo from Edvard Grieg's Violin Sonata Number 3. So this brings us to the conclusion of our musical program tonight. I want to thank, of course, all our special guests, and we're going to take a moment. We'll reset things, and then we'll go into our sort of backstage pass version of the concert where you all get to chat with us, the musicians. So thanks again, Ellen. That was great. Now I'm going to head back to my computer, and we'll reset a couple things. And if you have anything that you've thought of to ask any of the musicians, Joey or Rosie, excuse me, Joseph or Roseminna or Ellen or me, Ian, you may do that. Thank you, Bob. That's great. Oh, okay. Where are we? All right, so now I've got my microphone set back, and here I've got my, okay, we're back online here. Well, thanks again, everyone. You know, I suppose now is when we get the pizza and the beer out, right? Because the concert's over, and we are backstage. So welcome backstage with the musicians. If anyone has questions they wanted to, or anything you want to share, any reactions to the music, questions for the audience, now is the time to do so. If now you don't have anything and you have to go, then I just want to say thank you all for being here. It's always a pleasure to share music with people, even in a strange setting like in front of our computers. So thank you for all of that. Let's see. I already see a lot in the chat. I see thanks from our old friend Daniel Roslin, Ellen's former violin teacher, one of my dear friends and colleagues. Nice to see you here, Dan. I see in the chat several folks, including Jean Albertson, commenting on how much they enjoyed that. Thank you so much. If anyone would like, you can also just unmute yourselves and speak right up, or you can raise your hand and maybe I'll see you.
Thank you for a very lovely evening. It was a very nicely varied program too. And I liked the music. It was great. Thank you.
That's Rosalie. Thank you very much. Well, you know, today was a really quite balanced program between the early music of Bach that we heard from Joey, between the real sort of wet ink, fresh music right off the page that Rosie shared with us, to, you know, the traditional classical stuff like Edvard Grieg. So yeah, a little bit of something for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have something to share or add?
That last piece was so romantic. We don't hear much of that anymore unless, I mean, before you guys were born.
Right.
I was a fan of all the romantic, 40s, 50s, classic things that they just don't write them anymore. But that had the really lovely, thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, I love the music of Edvard Grieg. If anyone is interested, if you're interested, I mean, I think the best place to start with Grieg is probably his most popular piece is his piano concerto. That is one of those pieces that's for a symphony orchestra and piano, and I think they're going to play that at the orchestra hall, every season for eternity. It's just, that's how popular it is.
Nothing against the piano or cello, but I will follow a violin anywhere. And that's why you got two really fabulous young people doing it.
Thank you. Also, I should mention, that was only one part of the third sonata by Grieg. So there are 3 entire violin sonatas for violin and piano. So if anyone wants some musical homework, you can go find a recording or find a YouTube and hear more music by Grieg. I hear someone is asking about Monkey. That's my cat. Most of you who have seen some of these programs know my cat usually makes an appearance. I don't know where she went now, but she does like to be the center of attention.
AWOL.
We'll see.
I wanted to say that I just really, really appreciate the way you put the programs together with all the variety. And I'm very honored to be receiving a brand new piece of violin music how often do you get to hear something new, something fresh, something original by the person who wrote it, and so beautiful. We don't often get to do that, especially I'm up in the northern part of California in the redwoods where there's not much musical going on. And so I really enjoyed these concerts, but I enjoy just the work that it is to put them together before it even starts. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it myself, and I'm sure. Rosie, do you have anything for Elizabeth and her appreciation for your music?
Well, it's really it's just so nourishing to hear that kind of comment from an audience member, because when you write something new and you've only performed it a handful of times and most of them were in your living room, it's you don't really get a very good sense of how it lands and resonates with people. So thank you for that, and it's my pleasure to be able to share it on here. And yeah, I think it's amazing what Ian has continued to do and to draw people in online and in person, but yeah, online is a feat. So
yeah, thank you. I see from Maria Robinson in the chat, she says, thank you. It's a great antidote to all the COVID isolation. I do think that's important. Music is one of those things where, I'm a musician. I could spend my whole day playing the piano, and that would be satisfying in one way. It's what I love to do, playing the piano and making music. But making music just for myself doesn't quite complete the circle. I think that music is meant to be a kind of a community act. And so now, when we're all trying to be safe and when many of us are in isolation, sometimes, sort of a mandatory isolation or quarantine, I think it's important to have any way we can to just keep some sort of sense of gathering and sense of community. So thank you, Maria, for that comment.
I have a question for you. Oh,
of course, go ahead, Rosalie.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. You said there were a lot of people. How many people were in attendance tonight via the Zoom?
I saw 81 participants at the maximum, which means 81 households. Of course, some people, maybe multiple people on a screen, like Ellen and I. So I'm not sure the true count, but that's a very healthy number for a Saturday night on the middle of the internet.
That is great. Yeah.
Good. And I would like to say, first of all, echo what everyone's been saying. It's a wonderful program, wonderfully balanced. And I'm especially curious to ask Rosie if she's thinking of the pictures of Icarus, I always think immediately of the Broadville picture, which has been on Facebook recently too. Yeah. Are you? Do you have that in mind?
I do actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not that one in specific when I was writing this piece, but my mother has a very dear friend who is a printmaker. He makes etchings, and he made an etching that's called The Fall of Icarus, and it's hanging in her house, and I've seen it for years, and so I had that specific image in my head, and then I do know the one that you're talking about also. So yeah, the imagery of it and the paintings and the images in art have definitely played a role.
It's very interesting to me because in that particular one, Icarus is almost unnoticeable. No one pays attention. He's off in the distance and guys are plowing the field still and so on. And it's a very scary thought, but true. Yeah. Well, thank you. And Ian, I agree totally. I am practically isolated. I'm at St. Paul's Towers, as you know, probably, and not getting around much. But when I get to play for other people, it makes such a difference, even if I'm not doing anything complicated or wonderful or goofing, in fact, but it's necessary, absolutely necessary. And thank you. And thank you, Joey, also. Beautiful Bach, beautiful selections all around. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. That was wonderful. Thank you. I mean, this week and next week, I had a lot of concerts scheduled around the Bay Area with Ellen and with other musicians at several different senior communities, senior residences. And those were some of the first things to be canceled with this latest surge. And so, music is community, like I said. So we're hoping that this is one more way to just keep reaching out to people.
Other than music, I talk to people in the elevator. That's practically it.
Well, I'm so glad you were here, and I'm so glad everyone was here. And thank you for those of you who've hung on to the end of this program to hear us just chatting and talking. And it's important to me that people realize that music, especially classical music, is something that should be relatable. We should be able to all talk about it, regardless of our experience or regardless of our education or anything. Classical music has this reputation of being sometimes a kind of an elitist situation, and I really think that moments like this, where we can just all be people together, really sort of break down that wall and help us all enjoy it more. So I want to just close by thanking my guests, Ellen, who is here in San Francisco, Joey, who is tuning in from Boulder, Colorado, and of course Rosie out in New England. Thank you all for making this program happen, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. Why don't we go out with just one final round of applause for all of our guests, hey?
Hey, yay! Thank you. Merci. Bravo.
Okay, good night, everyone. Have a good week. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you.